Hello everyone, back tuning into today's second video. We're going to have a look at the ECMWF and Meteo France season models for today's second video, and it's going to take us through the winter really. We go through the early winter, through the main winter, December, January, February, and even into the late winter towards early spring period with this update. So we'll have a look at the mean sea level pressure anomalies for both of these two seasonal models, and then we'll have a look at temperature and precipitation as well. And then we'll do a month-by-month breakdown with the ECMWF. So quite an interesting update this, and I hope you enjoy it. Just to say that the 8th Winter 2018-19 update has been released. It's on the homepage at the moment, the video for the 8th Winter 2018-19 update. Later on today, this evening, that video will be placed on the Winter Updates page, and there'll be a written summary that goes with it as well, just going over everything that we discussed in the video. Coming up later on, in around a couple of hours' time, we're going to have a look at the Christmas period again. We've got the third Christmas written update for you. So a very busy day at Gazobis. Hope you're enjoying all of the updates, and I hope you keep checking back for more. So let's go through the two seasonal models to start off with, though, and then we'll be on to that Christmas update in a couple of hours' time. So we're on the Copernicus website, and we're looking at mean sea level pressure anomalies from Meteo France, starting off with November, December, January. So this is it. This is what the Meteo France mean sea level pressure anomaly is showing for this month. And you can see that it's going for quite a bit of blocking, actually, through the early winter period. It's placing an area of above average heights up there over Greenland, so quite a block signal. Also have a little bit of high pressure over towards the north of Scandinavia as well. Quite weak, that high pressure though. Otherwise, there's not much else. So not a corresponding trough underneath that block over Greenland, as you might expect. Nevertheless, you will think that that could be a rather cold start to the winter. Let's go through to the next tri-monthly period, and this one is taking us through December, January, February. So this is for the winter of 2018-19, the latest forecast in terms of mean sea level pressure from Meteo France looks like this. Still in the area of high pressure over Greenland. It's also going down in towards the North Atlantic, and we do have a trough over the UK and Western Europe as well, so it looks cold and unsettled there. It looks like Meteo France is going for a cold and unsettled winter there for the north and the northwest of Europe. You could certainly expect wintry precipitation, snow with that kind of scenario. Yeah, it looks like it's going for quite a cold and wintry winter for the winter of 2018-19. And then we go through to the final tri-monthly period, which is going to be January, February, March. And we find that the mean sea level pressure anomaly is taking that region down towards the central part of the Atlantic, with below average heights developing to the north of the UK. So it looks like we're reintroducing the jet stream there. Bring the jet stream through, something like that. It's going rather westerly. So the late winter is possibly seen to be more anticyclonic, possibly not as cold, therefore, with more in way of a westerly, flow. It's not bringing the air up from a particularly warm direction, though. The air, even at this point, is still coming from kind of like the north-northwest. So it could still be rather cold, I have to say. But in terms of blocking, and that's really what we look for to get proper Arctic cold weather. In terms of blocking, it looks like the early and mid-winter period is best with Meteo France for blocking. And then it kind of reduces as we go through to the late winter period. Right, so let's have a look at the temperature anomalies then. So this is how the temperature anomaly with Meteo France is looking for November, December, January. And, well, so even though we've got that blocking signal over Greenland, perhaps surprisingly, most parts of Europe are actually coming out with quite a warm early winter period. So up across Scandinavia, over towards Western Russia, it's warmer than average. Most parts of Europe are warmer than average as well, by around 0.5 degree to 1 degree above average. It's only really in the very, very extreme northwest of Europe, UK, and Ireland, where it's either average or we don't really have too much of a signal. But despite that blocking signal, I'm a bit surprised by just how strong the warmer than average temperature anomaly signal is, despite the Greenland blocking that we see through the early winter period. Then we go through to December, January, February. So this is the winter of 2018-19 itself. And looks like we get a bit of a southeast, sort of east-west split setting up. So across eastern parts of Europe, it looks relatively warmer than average again with those temperature anomalies. But it is turning cooler out to the northwest. You'll notice parts of the UK and Ireland actually going a little bit cooler than average at this point. France, for example, going close to average. So it does look as though things are cooling down there through the December, January, February period. But based on the high anomaly, you expect that to be colder than average again. And then we go through to the final temperature anomaly, which is going to take us through January, February, March. And this one then goes substantially cooler or colder than average in the west of Europe. So it really does cool down quite a bit, going down to a degree or more below average there in the extreme northwest around the UK and around Ireland too. And this is at the point where it looks like things are reverting a little bit more westerly in terms of the mean sea level pressure anomalies. So I'm not quite sure how the temperature and the mean sea level pressure anomalies are stacking up, but it does suggest that we've got a cooling trend here, going cold, increasingly cold, particularly in the west and northwest of Europe, the further on into the winter we're going. You notice from where we start off which is a very much warmer than average Europe. By the time we get through to January, February, March 2019, we're struggling to find warmer than average areas. Really, most places are either average or possibly even cooler than average as well. So precipitation with Meteo France looks like this. Not much of a signal for November, December, January through most parts of Europe. We do see that much of Scandinavia, though, is above average with precipitation. And in UK and Ireland also above average. And that's particularly for England and Ireland above average with precipitation there. Much drier than average in the North Atlantic, you'll notice. So close to Iceland, to the south of Greenland just there, of course. To the south of Greenland, much drier than average there. It's drier than average over towards Scandinavia as well. That's all indicative of the blocking that we're likely to be seeing through this early winter period. If you've got high pressure up there, you'll be displacing the low pressure and the jet stream further southwards, and I think we see evidence of that with the above average precipitation, kind of like through the UK, Ireland, Scandinavia, and it's dry or drier than average to the northwest. This takes us through to December, January, February itself, with the precipitation anomaly. Again, we're seeing that it's much drier than average here in the Northern Atlantic, close to Iceland, but it's above average with precipitation. Some of this could be snow, of course, across Scandinavia, down to the UK. Remember, there's a deep trough centred in somewhere across that sort of area. So Scandinavia, down to northern Germany, possibly into the UK. There's a trough of low pressure through there. Notice it's also going a bit wetter than average through the Mediterranean as well. That's something else we look for if we're going to be in a cold winter. You get low pressure down there and high pressure up here. What will tend to happen is that you'll squeeze in those easterly winds. So one of the things we do look for is low pressure around Italy. So as far as the precipitation is concerned and the mean sea level pressure anomalies, it looks like it's all shaping up to be quite a cold winter. It's just the temperature anomalies don't really show it all that cold, at least not till we get to the late winter anyway. And talking of late winter, this is the precipitation anomaly for January, February, March, and still the same sort of signals, really, still a bit drier than average in the North Atlantic, although a little bit less so, I think, compared to what we had through the earlier winter periods. Then we go through to the precipitation for the north of Europe, and again it looks rather above average, really, with precipitation close to the UK, although again perhaps not quite as much as was the case for the early winter period and then down across Mediterranean, also it looks rather above average with precipitation there as well. So obviously the signal weakens a little bit the further into winter we get, but overall this does look like Meteo France is forecasting potentially quite a cold winter. Right, ECMWF next. So we come back to mean sea level pressure anomalies. Now, last month, September's update really did set the cat amongst pigeons with the ECMWF, because I'm sure you remember just how much blocking it had through the winter. Well, this is what we see for the latest in terms of mean sea level pressure anomalies for November, December, January. And we do still have a blocking signal around Scandinavia and backing into west of Russia. We also have low pressure down here through the central Atlantic. So it looks like it's still, for this early winter period, still going for southerly tracking jet stream. We could still be bringing in quite cold east-southeasterly winds as well. But you'll notice the blocking signal is reduced quite a lot around Greenland and Iceland compared to what the ECM was showing last month. That's how things look for the winter itself. This is mean sea level pressure anomaly for December, January, February with the ECMWF winter 2018-19. Shows low pressure through the central Atlantic with the jet stream going through the central Atlantic as well. We've still got a signal for high pressure to be close to Scandinavia. So again, it looks like we do still have a bit of a cold winter signal here overall, with the chance of easterly winds being brought into us. But again, look what's happened over Greenland and Iceland. A much reduced blocking signal. Last month in September, this whole area for this tri-monthly period, December, January, February, had high pressure last month in September. Now that high pressure, and it is still there, but it has been pushed back towards Scandinavia, leaving Greenland with lower heights compared, or lower pressure compared to what we saw last month. Nevertheless, this is still just about a pattern for a colder than average winter, with below average heights going in down there, above average heights over Scandinavia, potentially feeding in those easterly winds. And then we go through to the final tri-monthly period, which will take us through January, February, March. And with this one, so it looks like we reduced that high pressure signal over Scandinavia. It is still there to some degree, but it's a reduced signal. The low pressure in the Atlantic looks like it's coming back northwards. A jet stream probably coming back northwards as well. And so, again, similar to Meteo France, I think overall ECM is probably suggesting the coldest weather is likely to be early and midwinter, and then a reduction of the blocking signal probably takes us into something milder towards the back end of the winter. Temperature anomalies from the ECMWF seasonal model are looking like this. Again, November, December, January to start us off. So it's not as warm across most parts of Europe as Meteo France output was. Warmer than average across southern Europe, warmer than average up over Scandinavia. That's because there's a big area of high pressure sitting over Scandinavia, of course. It will still be cold under that high pressure, but got a Scandinavian high, so the anomaly is above average. Otherwise, most parts of Central Europe and the Northwest coming out with average temperature anomalies, which for these seasonal models is relatively cool. The next tri-monthly period, December, January, February, winter 2018-19 looks like that. So still warmer than average over Scandinavia, as the high pressure is still sitting up there. Southern Europe still warmer than average, and then this central area out through the UK and Ireland, again close to average with temperature anomalies there. And then finally we get through to late winter, which is January, February, March tri-monthly period. And we see then that we are going warmer than average across much of Western Europe. So as a high pressure eases over Scandinavia, we start to re-establish a westerly flow of the southwesterlies, and that turns much of central, western, northwestern Europe milder as those westerly winds come back. So definitely, again, it's hinting that the coldest conditions likely through the early winter, and then it gets milder later on. Precipitation-wise, precipitation anomaly for November, December, January looks drier than average across the north. So in the Norwegian Sea, drier than average there. In the North Atlantic, drier than average there. That's indicative of high pressure being in. Wetter than average down across Spain and Portugal, and out in the Central Atlantic. That could be indicative of that southerly tracking jet stream, and chance of easterly winds being brought in between the low pressure to the south and the high pressure to the north. Most parts of Europe coming out with average precipitation. December, January, February looks like that. So still that blocking signal is there to the north of the UK, north of Scotland, close to Norway, in the North Atlantic. Yes, we see drier than average conditions there, indicative of high pressure. Wetter than average down here, indicative of low pressure. Otherwise, most places, again, are coming out with average precipitation. But I do think this could be shaping up for high pressure to be up there, low pressure with the jet stream to be down there. And with low pressure going through there, we could potentially be bringing in those easterly winds once again. Now, you'll expect that we get through to the last tri-monthly period and go a bit wetter, but actually it doesn't really show that as much. So this is January, February, March. So still a bit drier than average actually for northern parts of the UK, although a little bit reduced compared to the early winter period. It's interesting, but it's not really going wetter around this area. You would think that it would be if the westerlies and the southwesterlies were coming back in the latter part of the winter. So the precipitation anomaly is actually still shaping up to be rather blocked to the north and a little bit of a southerly tracking jet stream. But I think we have to take the temperature and mean sea level pressure most seriously there. Does look as though the blocking signal is reducing around Scandinavia, and the low pressure in the Atlantic is coming back north, and that you will think brings with it the threat of wetter conditions heading in from off the Atlantic. The only thing that will go against that, I suppose, as it's late winter into early spring, is that we might be seeing the Azores high building in around there. Although, if that was the case, you wouldn't get it wetter than average over Spain and Portugal. So that's a bit of a mystery. But overall, I think both parties are in agreement. Coldest conditions and most block conditions likely to be early, middle part of the winter, and then milder and presumably wetter later in the winter. Finally, let's just go to the website weather.us. You can find a link to both Copernicus and weather.us on the links page, and we'll do the month-by-month breakdown. So this is mean sea level pressure anomalies on a month-by-month basis, because those are just tri-monthly anomalies, of course, so you can't see how this is shaping up on a month-by-month situation. So we start with November. Mean sea level pressure anomalies for November look like that. Quite a bit of high pressure up to the northeast, so there's a bit of high pressure from Russia in Scandinavia. Low pressure is down here. So you'll think the jet stream is probably going to be down there as well. And so this could be quite a cold signal, actually, for November. It's not dramatic, but it could be a little bit colder than average in November if that comes off. Now look at this. This is December, and we see a drastic sort of strengthening of high pressure across Scandinavia and back into Russia. That is a really big blocking feature that's set up through there. Deep area of low pressure down to the south around Portugal, Spain. So the low pressure is trying to bring up warm air or mild air from the south, but the high pressure from the east is trying to bring in those bitterly cold easterly winds. That could be a very wintry scenario, because this low pressure down here could provide the energy in the form of weather fronts pushing up from the southwest, but engaging with that cold air that could be moved in from the high pressure across northern Europe. That could be quite a wintry situation. You could get quite a bit of snow out of that. And for northern parts of the country, it could be very cold, quite dry month. As well. This is January, mean sea level pressure anomaly. And this is where it all starts to change compared to last month. So I think November, December are broadly in line with what we saw with the ECMWF in September. But this is January. It is a little bit different. The high pressure is still there. It's centred more or less over Scandinavia, really. Low pressure is out to the west, further away from us. So this looks cold and dry, really, for January. You would expect to be bringing in easterly winds. They might bring in snow showers, of course, and there could be sort of a southeasterly tilt to that as well, so fairly dryish air is possible, but potentially quite a cold month, I would have thought, in January. Cold and dry after that perhaps quite wintry December. And then all changed for February, and this backs up what I was just discussing with the ECM. So in February, low pressure returns. It returns big time. All of that high pressure's gone, and obviously a very dramatic change has taken place, because now we're bringing in low pressure and mild west-southwesterly winds. So an early, quite a cold start to winter, but an early end to the winter, going milder and wetter as we get through to February. Then we're into March, and it's all changed again in March. So this possibly explains that rather odd end to the winter in terms of the precipitation anomalies, because in March it looks like high pressure comes back to Scandinavia again, which probably is trying to feed in easterly winds. So maybe things going colder again in March after a mild and wet February. And then we finish up in April, or at least I think that's as far as we go. Let's just check. Yeah, as far as we go in April. And that's all got a little bit wrong, so let's flip that over and go up to please select. So there we go, we're back to where it was. And in April we get low pressure out to the northwest of the UK, high pressure is over Scandinavia, but also crucially extending down into southern Europe. Squeeze between the two brings in spring with those southwesterly winds. We'll go back to November, and we'll have a look at the temperature anomalies next. So that's how the temperature anomalies look in November. Close to average, really, for most parts of Europe. It's quite warm in the far north, otherwise close to average, which is, as I say, for these season models, that is relatively cool, really. That's December. Actually, the UK and Ireland looks a little bit cooler than average, which is unusual. By the way, these are in Fahrenheit rather than centigrade, because it's a US website, but nevertheless still going for a cooler, colder than average December for the UK Ireland, which, as I say, it is unusual for these seasonal models. They do tend to be a little bit biased on the warmer side, I think, so to be seeing colder or cooler than average anomalies showing up there in December does indicate we could be in for quite a wintry month. That's January. We actually go a little bit milder than average in January. I'm not sure why that should be, really, if there's high pressure centred up there. So there probably could be a bit of a southeasterly tilt to the wind, but even in to wind in January. But even so, that's going to be quite cold. Whether it's not a direct Arctic east or northeasterly, Siberian east or northeasterly, may not be that, but even a southeasterly in January coming in off the continent is going to be pretty cold, I would have thought. That's February, that's fair enough, milder than average. It looks mild, wet month in February. March shows a cool down, temperature anomalies cooling down in March as the high pressure gets back in over Scandinavia. Then finally, that's April, which is possibly not as mild as I might have expected, given the fact that the setup looked to be bringing in spring from the central Atlantic. And then finally, we have a look at precipitation anomalies. So we'll go back to November. November shaping up to be quite an unsettled month, above average precipitation. I should check the scale. Yes, that's right. So above average precipitation in November across most parts of the UK and for Ireland as well. Could be a little bit of wintry potential in with that. Now that's December. This looks like the most interesting month of the winter, I have to say, because it's much drier than average to the north. So there, obviously, we're bringing in those easterly winds. It's very cold and dry across Scotland. But notice England and Wales are a little bit wetter than average. That's because we've got all this low pressure down here. So as those southwesterly winds bring their weather fronts and their areas of precipitation up from the southwest, they're moving into that easterly flow. And so this above average precipitation signal that we have here, particularly from the south of England, I dare say a lot of that could be snow if the model is right. Potentially a very wintry month in December. That's January, significantly drier for most parts of the country in January, which you'd expect with high pressure to be in over Scandinavia. February goes wet. That's because low pressure is coming back during the course of February, so mild wet month in February after a cold, dry start to winter. And then we get through to March, and that one looks fairly dry to the north. Notice it is substantially drier than average up over Scandinavia, so real signs of high pressure coming back in March, potentially bring those EC winds back with them as well. And then that is April, where we're back into more of a west-southwesterly flow, so in April it's rather wetter in the north and in the west too. Bear in mind, these charts that are going sort of 3, 4, 5, 6 months away really are just for fun. It's the first couple of months, November, December, that we're best off focusing on. Let's just go back to mean sea level pressure anomalies. The last thing I want to show you is just a more wide sort of view of this. So what can we look at from that one? Let's have a look at the Americas view. So what you've got to focus on with this one is kind of like this area in the top right-hand corner of the chart as you are looking at it. Let's go back to November. Unless you're watching in America, and of course you'll be much more interested in what's happening across America then. But this gives a view of the Atlantic really, so it is quite useful to look at this as well. So in November, it does show we can have quite a blocking signal close to Greenland. We know we've got high pressure to our northeast as well, over towards Scandinavia. We've got plenty of low pressure down here. So I think November could have wintry potential here. I really do. I think November could get us off to an early sort of wintry start to this season. There may be snow in November, if that's right. That is December. It does look very, very interesting indeed. The centre of the blocking is to the northeast of the UK, but it does extend towards Iceland and Greenland as well. Look at the low pressure that's down to the southwest. So the AO and the NAO would be very negative here with this, bringing in those the jet stream to the south of the UK. And that just looks like it could be a very wintry month in December. In a long time since we've had a wintry December. You have to go back to the December to remember in 2010. But if the EC model is right, it's possible that December 2018 could be wintry. Now that's January, so you can see what's going on in January. We've got low pressure pushing northwards actually in the North Atlantic, and we do have that high pressure to our northeast. So we're doing something like that with the jet stream. It's a very complicated month in January. You would look at that and think maybe battleground UK type month actually. So it's not perhaps quite as straightforward as you might have expected given the European view, because this low pressure is a long way further north, so it is trying to bring in those westerly winds. At the same time, the high pressure over Scandinavia is trying to keep the easterly winds going. So quite which way January goes is interesting to ponder. By the time we get through to February, the Atlantic and the jet stream has overridden that blocking, pushed it all away, and so the Atlantic strikes back, if you like, in February, bringing a mild, wet and windy end to the winter. But not for long, and then we go through to March and the high pressure comes back over Scandinavia. It also extends to this ridge to the north and northwest of the UK. So rather an odd looking pattern in March, but it could get us back into something colder and drier. And then finally we finish up in April with low pressure out to the northwest of the UK. High pressure is across southern Europe, but also extending up towards Scandinavia. Over there we have a ridge over in the central Atlantic too. Looks milder and more unsettled in April. And I think that pretty much covers everything that we can look at. So what do we take away from October's update of the Meteo France and ECMWF seasonal models? I think what we can say is that the early winter period with both models is potentially shaping up to be cold. There is wintry potential here. For November, even as early as November, I think there's some wintry potential from the ECMWF. December definitely has wintry potential. That could be the most interesting month of the winter. Early on, we may get hit by some really quite cold and snowy weather. And then January is one to ponder, really. It could be very cold in January, but equally it could be quite mild, or we could find ourselves in a battleground and have kind of like regular sort of bouts of snow followed by thaws, followed by a few days of milder weather, and then back to something colder again. It could be that kind of month in January. February brings an early end to winter, mild, wet and windy for February. We won't worry about March and April because it's too far away. Right, so we'll do it all over again next month, and of course these two models will be forming part of the second Winter 2018-19 season model roundup that we're going to do on Saturday. Very close to that now. We're going to get something like 12 or 13 long-range models together, and we'll see what they're all showing. Will there be support from those other models for potentially a colder winter? Have to wait and see, but you'll find out on Saturday when we do that second Winter 2018-19 season model roundup. And then next month we'll have your Meteo France and EC season model update once again. Coming up later on this afternoon, we're going to have the third update for Christmas in terms of the written updates anyway. And then the 8th Winter 2018-19 update, as I say, will be placed on the Winter Updates forecast page with a written summary around 7 o'clock this evening. Very, very busy day at Gazovitz. Hope you're enjoying all of the updates. And at half an hour, that's all for now, and thanks for watching.